When you chop with a dull axe, all of a sudden you have to use aggression, right? More so. All of a sudden it's not as much skill as it is just machismo.
Are you feeling uncertain in your faith journey? Looking for a boost in your spiritual walk? Eager to deepen your relationship with the Lord? Welcome to Higher Ground, an elevated parish missions podcast where faith meets inspiration and community.
The life of a Catholic is meant to be a great adventure. Join us, and let's discover what awaits us on Higher Ground. Hello, welcome back to Higher Ground, an elevated parish mission podcast. I am Martin Watjen.
And I'm Brian Hough. Hey, Martin, I got something to share with you here. I know those who are listening, you see this? This is a pillow. Why are you laughing?
Because
it's a pillow.
You love dogs.
I love dogs. It's a pillow of one of our most cherished pets, and Benny. After Benedict Francis, the two saints, our twins went to a Benedictine school and a Franciscan school, but it was happenstance. But anyway, I bring it up because I know our topic today is going to be talking a little bit about manly things a little bit in regards to like being a man. And there's nothing better than a man's best friend. So I figured we'd kick us off with an intro by one of the best pups ever. Shout out to Benny Francis.
When you get in front of your dogs, you completely change. You
don't give away my secrets, please. Keep them amongst us.
That is hilarious.
When you got a pup, don't be keeping back. Let us know about your pup.
That's true. I have a GSP, a German short-haired pointer. She is a sweetie, year-old, convinced by our kids to get, and then of course, in classic fashion, has now become really the parents' dog. But I'm not home nearly as much as Jess is, and so Jessica has to take the puppy out all the time, and Jess was not in favor of having a dog.
We have two. It's Winnie and Cooper. Winnie Cooper, for those who remember the Wonder Years, yes, we named it after them. But they're both after saints, Saint Winifred and Saint Cupertino, and they are a English cream golden retriever and a golden retriever Labrador. They're the best of friends. I don't know what we do without them. But anyway, just shout out to pups everywhere.
I love it. Well, you're right. I'm talking about some manly things, but this really applies to everybody. So if you are a lady listening, please don't feel like you have to sign off. I was contemplating on this because I'm planning for a trip for next year with some high school boys, part of the Trail Life program. I call them boys. I probably should call them young men. But that's really what we're striving for, is for them to grow into being men of God. That's my big accomplishment with this. I could care less as much about the badges that they get. If they leave closer to being a man of God, then I feel like I've done what I was asked to do. And to do that, sometimes we got to go out into crazy places that are just really pushing the max for their abilities. And one of the things that we did in the past, and the boys want to do again, is to go to a place out in Colorado and to spend some time at Annunciation Heights camp up there outside of Estes Park, which is so beautiful, up at 8,900 feet. And there is a Class B lumberjack, Josh Marcantonio, up there, who has given us the opportunity in the past, and hopefully he'll do it again, where we can chop down trees. And there is just something quintessential about chopping a tree down or splitting wood that really hits home for a guy, right? There's just something about that. Although I will say some of the ladies I've seen can definitely out-chop me. But it's this concept of just like chopping down. And have you ever chopped wood, Brian? Is that something that you can resonate with?
Yes, I have split a few logs in my life, so it definitely allows aggression to get out, for sure.
There was one time it was my birthday, and a buddy of mine, actually Brother Ross Henley, with the Capuchins, who we've had on before, he took me to my parents' house when we were living in Virginia, and we were splitting wood, and it was my birthday. I was like, this is the best. Turns out he was just trying to distract me for a surprise birthday party that was being planned inside the house, which I had no idea. He said, hey, I think we should go in. I was like, why? Like, this is great. All I wanted to do was just split wood for 4 hours. Anyways, but when you're chopping wood, it's great when you have a nice axe. When you're splitting wood, it's great when you have the tool that's proper for it, but sometimes the tool gets dull, right? And when you chop with a dull axe, all of a sudden you have to use aggression, right? More so. All of a sudden it's not as much skill as it is just machismo. And you're like, my will is going to defeat this against every odd, against whatever. And does it always work out? No. What you end up with is like mush on the top of the log because you're using a dull splitting axe or, an improper tool. And I had a realization this week, and I think maybe a lot of people can relate to this, that I've often treated my spiritual life like this chore that I have to squeeze in, like the last item on a to-do list. That to-do list, which already includes like go make coffee, or, figure out why the Wi-Fi is blinking, or, all these little things that just add up throughout the day. And when I treat it that way, my whole week feels like a grind. Like I'm trying to chop down a forest of all the things that I'm asked to do, whether it's work, bills, keeping the kids alive, and I'm doing it with a spiritual axe that hasn't been sharpened, right? So we talked about in a previous episode about our spirituality and the things that are the true reality. And if the true reality is our spiritual reality, that we may not be able to see it, but we know that it is the guiding force for us, and we haven't taken the time to really hone in on that, maybe for a long time, all of a sudden it takes effort. It takes grunting and sweating and like 10 times more effort than you ever would have. I want to reflect real quick, this in Ecclesiastes 10:10. But they say, if the axe becomes dull, though at first he made easy progress, he must increase his efforts. But the craftsman has the advantage of his skill. The craftsman has the advantage of his skill. The idea that it's a craftsman knows when to stop, when to sharpen the tool, how many times you can take a whack at something before it needs attention. The unknown person, although has a tool, goes to town on it over and over and over again, trying to make headway, only using exerted effort. Does that sound like something that you've been a part of in the past, where maybe things didn't align in your schedule and all of a sudden you're pushing through with just like sheer drive, but maybe to not the end that you were looking for, or with more effort than you were expecting?
Yeah, it reminds you of a quote. I think it was from St. Francis de Sales that said you should spend 30 minutes a day praying. If you don't have time, spend an hour. And it always seems like contradictory. Obviously, he's a saint and I'm not, so I want to trust what he says. But a tangible example of that is, as you said, with the busyness of life, with kids, particularly when I was driving like an hour one way to work, there's always an excuse and always a reason why you can't fit prayer in. And what's interesting is that whenever you're praying, you're in essence, flexing that spiritual muscle, your soul and your relationship with the Lord. And whenever you don't do it, quote, atrophy sets in, right? Kind of like when you're lifting weights and you stop lifting, your muscles start to feel kind of weird because you haven't exercised them. And you start losing your strength. So whenever you try to live out your day that needs strength, not just the physical strength of eating and sleeping, but just as importantly, the spiritual strength, it is hard to do the reality of what God's actually do, the role, the vocation, these things he's calling you to do, to be able to do that without that spiritual nourishment to keep nudging you forward. And those moments when I failed to pray, maybe 2 or 3 days in a row, you start feeling this lethargy and everything just takes on a crappy type of mentality. All of a sudden, when you start praying again, it's like almost like this energy just comes back in you, and you have greater perspective, greater desires, and greater fulfillment in all that you're doing. So I just find out when I don't pray, good things do not come forth from it.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to be a critic maybe, or to be on the sidelines and talk about this kind of stuff. But to actually do it takes being in the quote unquote arena. Theodore Roosevelt talks about this. He wrote I don't know what this was for, if it was a talk that he gave, but it's called The Man in the Arena. And it says, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I mean, does that stir up anything in you? This idea of just do something, just do it, right? Like take 5 minutes.
Well, as you were saying that, what really came to my mind, like right in my forefront, was David. Why? For 2 reasons. One, David, yes, he had energy and excitement. He wanted to do something. No one else was willing to stand to the giant. So he went out, was ready to take him on. He was like, you're nuts. But he didn't just do it haphazardly. He prepared himself over years of being a shepherd, communing with the Lord in prayer as he was watching the sheep, honing his skills with the slingshot, and all these things that allowed him through that preparation, through prayer, through that spiritual communion with the Lord, to empower him with the boldness to go forward and to, quote, do something to make a difference. So it was, both of those had to go hand in hand. It wasn't just being haphazard. It required preparation, but the preparation was meant for what? To prepare you for something. And so that just really resonated David in my mind as you were saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that example. And I think that we could point this back to a lot of the great men and women in the past. But, we are called to greatness ourselves. We put ourselves on the sideline saying, well, we're not the boxer in the arena, right? We're not the person who's doing X, Y, and Z, and we're just watchers. And I would say, no, we are called to, as you said, Brian, prepare yourself for something that the Lord is trying to prepare you for in your life, in your future, or in the moment. So I think the idea is that we need to choose one area of our life, maybe. This is something we could do this week. Choose an area in your life where you've been working too hard, putting too much effort with a dull axe, with too little wisdom or too little prayer, and maybe just commit a few minutes, say 5 minutes, of sharpening that axe with prayer, with scripture, before you engage in that task again this week. Thank you for tuning in to Higher Ground. We hope today's episode has lifted your spirit and sparked your faith to new heights. Be sure to invite a friend to join us on this journey next time. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast, and stay connected with our vibrant community by following us on Facebook and Instagram for more updates and inspiration.
If you'd like to support our mission, visit elevatedparishmissions.org and consider assisting us financially. There, you can also learn more about hosting one of our missions at a parish near you or inviting us to your parish. Together, we can continue to elevate and inspire others to greater heights in their faith. Until next time, stay elevated and keep reaching for higher ground.